I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even finish the cup of coffee I brought into the room. I just slid the stamped federal document across the polished oak table and waited. The HOA president. A man who loved to hear his own voice so much he practically shouted his greetings in the grocery store parking lot. Froze mid-sentence. Their lawyer reached for the page, scanned the header, and his whole face drained of color. He pushed his glasses up like maybe he'd misread something. But no, the words were clear. Federally protected veteran property. My lot. My deed. And their little scheme had just come crashing down in front of every board member and neighbor who thought they could take what wasn't theirs. I hadn't bought that land to make a statement. Honestly, I wasn't even planning to live there yet. It was just a quiet corner of town. A half-acre, vacant lot near the creek where I could eventually build something small. I had gotten it cheap through an estate sale before I was shipped overseas. At the time, it felt like a promise to myself. Something waiting for me back home. Not a flashy house. Not some suburban showcase, just land. Dirt and trees. A place where I could breathe without feeling like I owed someone an explanation. I grew up in a family that didn't own much, and when you come back from deployment, you look at stability differently. That patch of ground meant roots. It meant that whenever I was done with the military, I wouldn't have to start from zero. I'd have somewhere to plant my feet. Maybe build a little cabin or keep it just as it was. A space that was mine, and I wasn't looking for drama. The lot was inside a subdivision, but on the far edge, not developed yet, just grass and a stand of maple trees shading the back. I figured if I didn't bother anyone, they wouldn't bother me. I didn't attend meetings, didn't care about paint colors or mailbox styles. I was still thousands of miles away, focused on the job I was actually responsible for. The first letter came while I was deployed. My sister scanned it and sent it to me by email. A nacho, a notice, declaring my vacant lot in violation for not being maintained to community standards. They wanted me to hire a landscaping service to cut down excess vegetation. I laughed about it in the barracks. The place was an empty lot with grass and trees. That was its entire state of being. What exactly was I supposed to maintain? Manicure the dirt. I told her to ignore it. Then came the second letter. This one said I had failed to respond and was being fined $75 per week until the property was remedied. By the third letter, the fines had ballooned, and there was a note about possible lien actions. That was the first time I stopped laughing. They were threatening to put a lien on a property I owned outright, because I didn't mow dirt while stationed halfway across the world. When I got leave, I called the HOA directly. I stayed polite. I explained that I was active duty, stationed out of state, and the property was unimproved. No house, no utilities, just an empty plot. I asked for some grace. What I got was mockery. The president told me, if you can't take care of it, maybe you shouldn't own property here. His tone was smug, the kind of superiority only a man with too much free time and a little paperwork power can muster. I thought maybe it was just him, so I tried again. Sent emails, asked for a payment plan or an exemption. What came back was worse. They doubled the fines. They added administrative fees. And the kicker, they sent me notice that due to unpaid assessments, they were moving to auction off my lot. Not rent it, not maintain it, sell it. I almost didn't believe it. I thought surely, they couldn't just decide to sell private property without even going through a judge. But HOAs live in this weird gray zone where, if nobody pushes back, they act like kings. And I wasn't there to push back. I was in the desert, doing 12-hour shifts, watching emails roll in that told me strangers were actively trying to erase something I had paid for with my own money. That's the moment the tone shifted inside me. Not to anger, to focus. I started reading. Between missions, I dug through state property code, Veterans Protections, the Service Members Civil Relief Act. The more I read, the clearer it became. The HOA had made a fatal mistake. They hadn't gone through the courts. They had declared a lien and scheduled a sale internally, and under federal law, trying to seize property belonging to an active duty service member. Without judicial approval wasn't just shady. It was illegal. A federal offense. I kept my mouth shut. I didn't call them back. Instead, I pulled every record I could. I ordered certified copies of my deed from the county clerk. I documented every letter they sent. My sister took time-stamped photos of the lot showing it was clean, empty, not the overgrown hazard they described. I filed it all in a binder, and then I requested help from the legal office on base. That's when things really clicked into place, because the Service Members Civil Relief Act doesn't they play around. It exists specifically to prevent exactly this kind of nonsense. People exploiting soldiers because they aren't home to fight back. The base attorney reviewed my case, nodded once, and said, they don't know what they've stepped in. The auction date came and went while I was still overseas. They went ahead and sold my lot to a neighbor's cousin for pennies on the dollar. They filed their little paperwork in-house and congratulated themselves on being decisive. By the time I rotated home and walked into the county records office, the clerk raised an eyebrow and said, "You know your lot's listed under someone else now?" I said yes, and I handed her the federal order I had in my backpack. It took less than 3 weeks for the Department of Justice to file notice. The sale was void. The HOS claim was void. Not only that, the entire association was suddenly under investigation for improper property seizures. What they had done wasn't just petty, it was criminal. And it wasn't me saying that. It was the US government. That brings me back to the boardroom. They had called a meeting to resolve disputes. They expected me to beg, maybe, to negotiate some kind of settlement. Instead, I walked in with my binder, set down my coffee, and let their own lawyer read the federal protection order. No yelling. No threats. Just ink on paper. You could feel the air get heavy as the reality sank in. The neighbor who had bought my lot suddenly wouldn't look at me. The president's smile froze into something brittle and small, and then came the silence. Long, awkward silence. Nobody in that room could pretend anymore. They hadn't beaten me. They had broken the law. The aftermath was slow but satisfying. The HOA president resigned within a month. 2 board members quit shortly after when the investigation started looking at their financial practices. Neighbors who used to glare at me suddenly became very polite, very quiet. Some even apologized. The lot reverted to my name, clean and untouchable, with a federal protection flag attached to the deed. As for me, I didn't build on it. Not right away. I planted a few young trees, set up a small wooden sign that simply read, "Protected Veteran Property." That was enough. A reminder. Now, when I drive through, the same people who once tried to erase me either wave stiffly or turn their heads. And I don't need their friendship. What I needed was peace. What I needed was proof that they couldn't take what wasn't theirs. And now, I have both.